All right, let's just jump right in. We are about to unpack one of the most explosive, most consequential periods in all of human history. This is a moment when the world map wasn't just redrawn, it was basically torn to shreds and then pieced back together in a way no one could have ever predicted.
I mean, just think about that for a second. 30 years. In the time it takes most of us to build a career, maybe pay off a mortgage, a new power didn't just crawl out of the Arabian desert, it swallowed two of the world's oldest, most powerful empires whole.
In this incredibly short sliver of time, a completely new state, forged in the heat of the Arabian Peninsula, would do what seemed absolutely impossible. It would take down two superpowers and totally reroute the course of history for Europe, for Asia, and for Africa.
So, what was this new state? Well, you have to understand, it started as this fragile, completely untested political experiment centered in the city of Medina. It was surrounded by rivals, and honestly, its survival was anything but guaranteed.
And its targets? Oh, just the two absolute titans of the ancient world. You had the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantines, the direct heirs to Caesar and Augustus, and then you had the mighty Sasanian Empire of Persia. These were the global superpowers of their day. The end result of this colossal collision, a brand new empire that stretched all the way from the coasts of North Africa to the mountains of Central Asia. This wasn't just expansion. The sources call it a kind of historical whiplash, and you can really see why. It was just that fast. But how on earth did this happen? Well, before this new state could even think about expanding outward, it first had to survive its own birth. The story of the Rashidun Caliphate, that's the state led by the first four successors to Muhammad, it actually begins with this brutal, desperate fight for its own existence. Right after the Prophet Muhammad's death, the whole project just about imploded. Different tribes basically said, "We're out," and cleared their independence. So the state had to fight a series of really bloody campaigns called the Ridda Wars. Under the first caliph, Abu Bakr, the choice was stark: unify by force or simply cease to exist. And here's the incredible paradox, right? This brutal internal war, which really should have been a fatal weakness, ended up accidentally forging the exact tool they needed for external conquest. For pretty much the first time, all these warring tribes of Arabia were brought under a single, central military command. And what came out the other side was a battle-hardened, unified army. Okay, so let's shift focus to the targets. With this new, unified army looking for something to do, it turns its eyes north. And what it sees are these two giants who looked tough on the outside, but were actually hollowed out and cracking from the inside. Yeah, these were not empires at the top of their game. Not even close. They had just finished a decades-long, absolutely savage war against each other that left them both exhausted. Their bank accounts were empty, their armies were worn out, their borders were weak, and their people were just sick and tired of constant war and crushing taxes. You can see the massive strategic imbalance right here. On one side, you've got this unified, super mobile force just hitting its stride. And on the other, you have these exhausted, broke, and fragmented empires. Honestly, the fight was almost over before the first major battle was even fought. This is the moment where things kick into high gear. What started as opportunistic raids now transforms into a systematic, unstoppable wave of conquest. This is all happening under the second caliph Omar, who was really the architect of this whole grand expansion. And just look at the speed of it all. It's staggering. Within just 2 years of these campaigns really getting going, the heart of the Byzantine Middle East, Syria, is gone. 5 years after that, Egypt, the breadbasket of their empire, is conquered. And by 644, the Sasanian Persian military is effectively shattered. This wasn't a slow, grinding war. It was a lightning blitz that just tore through imperial defenses faster than anyone could possibly react. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just luck. It was a better system. The unified command meant everyone was on the same page. Their armies were lighter and faster, using the desert like a highway to outmaneuver bigger, slower enemies. They were also smart. They taxed conquered lands instead of burning them to the ground, which cut down on local resistance. And maybe most importantly, it was a true meritocracy. Commanders who won battles got promoted. Those who failed, they were replaced. Simple as that. This quote just nails it. It gets to the very heart of what was happening. The Rashidun armies weren't always bigger, but man, they were faster, they were more adaptable, and they were more cohesive. Speed was their ultimate weapon.
Okay, so winning battles is one thing. That's hard enough. But how do you turn all that conquered land into a functioning, stable empire that's going to last? The next phase was all about shifting from pure conquest to the much harder work of control.
And they had a really practical playbook for this. First, you smash the enemy's main army out in the open. Second, you secure the key cities and turn them into military bases. Third, and this was brilliant, instead of trying to replace the whole local government, they just integrated the administrators who were already there. It kept things running smoothly. And finally, they started to standardize how the whole thing was governed. This period, especially under the third caliph, Uthman, was all about building the skeleton to hold this massive new body together. They didn't just take over old cities, they built brand new ones, places like Kufa, Basra, and Fustat, that were engineered from the ground up to be military and administrative hubs, designed to project power deep into the new territories. So let's just pull this all together. That 30-year window, it wasn't just a period of conquest. It was a full-blown revolution that took advantage of a perfect storm of conditions to create an entirely new world order.
It really was this lethal combination of factors all hitting at once. You had the perfect opportunity, two weakened giants just ready to be knocked over. You had the perfect tool, a newly unified, battle-tested army that was itching for a fight. And you had the perfect strategy, a system that was built for speed, for momentum, and for ruthless competence. And this says it all, doesn't it? The growth wasn't slow and organic like a tree. Nope, it was a flashpoint. It was a fire that just raced across a dry landscape, consuming everything in its path before its enemies could even smell the smoke.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. The very speed and the wild success of the expansion created these enormous internal pressures. A system that was built for constant war now had to figure out how to govern in peace. And as the empire's borders finally started to settle, all that explosive energy that had been pointed outward, it began to turn inward. And that would eventually lead to civil war. The fire, having run out of fuel on the frontier, was about to start burning at its own center.